All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? As people get settled in, I think many of you know me. I'm Shaun Grannis. I am the Vice President for Data and Analytics here at the Regenstrief Institute. Today, I'm going to talk to you about something called a Linkage honest broker. I'll explain what that is and why it's important and what we can do with it. Let me get through these preliminaries here. Do you think I drew that image? No, I didn't. Who or what drew that image? Yeah. Yeah. So what this represents is on the left side, streaming into the abstract technical object in the center, out comes de-identified encrypted data that people cannot understand or identify any particular individual in. So that is the abstract representation of a linkage honest broker. There, we're done. All right. Next, here, some disclosures. Most of you click through the Apple license, right? So there we go. My two things, I received support from IHI as their Chief Medical Information Officer, and also we are doing work with Datavant, who will be mentioned in this presentation. They're supporting some industry-based research. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. So the problems, let's start here. These problems have been present for the last 25 years, ever since Clem McDonald came to me when I was a fellow and said, hey, we have this National Cancer Institute grant called the SPIN grant, and we need to be able to link patients together. Why don't you give this a shot? And that was a fateful day, because record linkage has been one of my primary research areas since then. The linkage honest broker represents sort of an evolution of that work. But the problems are, as we all know, healthcare data is fragmented in our country, everywhere actually. Patients receive care in multiple locations, and their information is stored with different identifiers, varying ways of identifying a person. The United States is the last developed country in the world without a national patient ID. And as we all know, there are very complex privacy laws related to sharing of data. And so these are motivating factors for privacy preserving record linkage and a linkage honest broker. This is a busy slide with a lot of information, and I'm going to walk through many of these points because I think these are important elements of what a linkage honest broker does. I actually presented these slides to the director of NCATS back in January because there was still some confusion at NCATS, who supports the National Clinical Cohort Collaborative, or N3C. There was still some confusion about what a linkage honest broker actually was and what did it do. And so I went up to one of the leaders of NCATS at the beginning of the day, and I said, the confusion ends today. And this slide was a part of ending that confusion. So the linkage honest broker is a neutral entity, separate from the holders of the clinical data and separate from the analyzers of the clinical data. We are an independent, vendor-neutral system. So basically, the system that Regenstrief has built to be a linkage honest broker is independent of the other N3C infrastructure. We stand sort of as a beacon separate from that to manage identity for the system. Our system also, because we match data from many different sources, different sources have different data elements available for matching and different levels of data quality. In matching, if you have to choose between a super duper really good advanced, even maybe say an AI linkage algorithm and good quality data, you choose good quality data every time. And so the quality varies across sites. And so that is going to inform what your matching algorithm should be. And so in N3C, different sites, we apply different matching algorithms to different sites based on their needs. And so we have that flexibility with that matching. We use something called Privacy Preserving Record Linkage, PPRL. I'm going to say more about that in a minute. But PPRL effectively removes the identity of individuals while preserving the ability to match those individuals, to link those individuals together. So there's actually no PII, no PHI being transmitted to us. We have designed algorithms to have very high precision and recall sensitivity and positive predictive value, and we validate those over time as well. Our system also has the ability to hold what we call metadata. So we actually have the capability to capture additional information like what kind of site was this? Was this an imaging site? Was it a public health site? Was this cancer data, et cetera? So we can support a metadata layer within this as well to help manage different projects and processes. Of course, two fundamental reasons why we match. Number one, we want to find duplicates within the same system, and we want to link the same patient across systems. In my vernacular, duplicates are within a system, links are across system. And by the way, should we see duplicates within a single system? Should we? Ideally, should there be duplicates within a single system? No, there shouldn't. No. You do want the information from those duplicates, but in an ideal world, the reason that duplicates arise in internal systems is because of flawed processes. Either internal systems aren't talking to one another, or more often there's fat finger mistyping typos. So matches within a system tend to occur because there's been an error in the process, right? Matches across systems should occur because we know patients are seen for their healthcare in multiple locations. Those types of matches tend to be easier because the quality is generally, on average, better than matching a duplicate. So deduplication within a single system is harder, more challenging, requires different approaches than linking across systems. And again, that's some of the expertise and recognition that we brought to this process. So here, boiled down as simply as possible on this slide, this is what N3C represents and what the Linkage Honest Broker supports. There's two swim lanes here. You got a top and a bottom. On the top is the identity swim lane. Starting from the left, we have multiple institutions who send data. We have over 70 institutions involved in N3C. Here, we just use the example of UNC and Duke since they're nearby. The same patient is seen at both of those institutions. That same patient has different identifiers at that institution. However, because they send us his name, his date of birth, etc., we can use privacy-preserving techniques to identify that person across those sites. And what we do is we provide something called a linkage map to the bottom swim lane, which is the clinical data swim lane. So In the bottom, that same patient's data comes through under 2 different identifiers. So the clinical data is fragmented across those 2 different systems. That data arrives and is stored in the clinical data storage separate from the linkage honest broker. We do not see the clinical data. That data is stored under 2 separate IDs, but when the clinical system receives the linkage map, they now know that those data elements belong to the same person. Okay? That's N3C, and then on the right side of the screen, and if you all don't know about N3C and the capabilities or opportunities there, N3C, the purpose of this is to offer a data resource to anyone, public or academic, who wants to do research. Now, N3C started out as a COVID cohort, but we are expanding to different diseases, including renal and cancer. NCI is providing funding to expand N3C, as are other groups. And so as researchers, I would encourage you to look into the N3C data resource because it's out there, and they and the group runs periodic reports to see who's conducting research, and the most frequently cited Regenstrief investigator is no longer here at the Institute. They've moved on, but their name hadn't changed. I don't know if you guys know Jeremy Harper, but he's involved in a lot of. So Jeremy Harper is the most frequently seen Regenstrief investigator. We're trying to get that changed. But I would like to see more actual investigators who are here at the Institute take advantage of that data for learners, for trainees, for a lot of reasons. I think there's some great opportunity to leverage that data. So that was a pitch for N3C. But basically, this story, identity separate from clinical, is important to many decision makers, policy makers, privacy and security stakeholders. They like the notion that identity and clinical are separate and that identity is actually de-identified. So there's multiple layers of protection in this integrated system. And, what we're trying to overcome here and what's happening, we know in this country, everywhere, electronic clinical data is exploding, right? There's so much of it, and people now are saying, boy, there's lots of data everywhere. How do we put it together and actually use it for reasons? And then who steps in? The attorneys. And they say, who are you and why do you want to use our data? This type of an approach actually gives attorneys and everyone less heartburn. And so that's one of the primary important reasons is this approach actually enables people to say yes to sharing data when they're asked. And I think that's super important in a world where we need to pool data in order to answer questions. Particularly, another one of NCAT's strong interest is rare diseases, right? How are you going to study rare diseases if you don't have data from many sites? So you have a large volume of data so you can study something that occurs infrequently. So that's the basic system. If you have somewhere else to be, you can leave now. But now I'm going to go into more detail. We use something called a token. A token is a combination in privacy-preserving record linkage. We start by deciding which combinations of fields we will use to do the matching, okay? In matching in general, the general philosophy of matching is I've got 2 records. Does last name agree? Does first name agree? Does date of birth agree? Do these fields agree? Or then the next question is, are they at least similar? Do they have some similarity? So what we do is we have to create these tokens that contain enough information, but be discriminating enough at the same time to be able to match, because once we take these combination of tokens, and by the way, there's more tokens than this. This is just an example of what we're using. Once we have these tokens, we can then apply the cryptographic hashing, which I'll talk about in a second. But what I do want to point out here is, because there are lots of, typographical errors and nicknames, when a site prepares their data to send to N3C to be matched, they use a tokenization software. Currently, that's DataVan. But again, our system is vendor agnostic. If we want to change the tokens tomorrow, we can, and use somebody else's. But we're using DataVan software right now. And what that does is it pre-processes the data on site. The site contributor uses their data. They run it, they own it, they operate it. Nobody outside the system does. That creates each one of these tokens, does some phonetic transformation, sound X, many of you are aware of Metaphone, to deal with some of the errors. And then those encrypted tokens are sent. So just so you're aware, what happens is, here's an example token. I just made this up, last name, first name, year of birth. When you pass a string into a hashing process, it's like a fingerprint. It's unique to you. But if somebody looked at a fingerprint on its own, they would never know it's you. Okay, and that's the key. So when we turn Bill Thomas 78 into a hash value, it's a bunch of gobbledygook. But you'll notice if even one letter changes between the two Bill Thomases, the hash value completely changes. Completely changes. And so that's a key for discrimination. And so this is at the core of what we do with to protect patient identity. With this type of hash function, under HIPAA regulations, if an expert says you have hashed this appropriately, you're using appropriate standards, then this is considered de-identified data. And we match under the expert determination rule under HIPAA to consider this de-identified. This is more detail than most of you probably want, but once you have that hash that I showed you, once you get this gobbledygook, then you need to send, that site needs to send it to us, to the Linkage Honest Broker. Well, there's a risk going over the line that somebody might see that token. So another thing that this DataVan software does is it applies a public key, private key encryption. You know, when you send your data, your credit card information to Amazon, it's encrypted using public private key encryption to make sure that nobody sees your credit card in transit. We do the exact same thing with these tokens. Even though we have a de-identified hash, we do one further hashing of it when it's on the line. When we, the Linkage Honest Broker, receive it, we unencrypt it, and we can see the actual hash there. So this is that Duke UNC example now with the hashes. So you can see the patient, both at Duke and UNC, have they did this right. But that same person, let's assume that their tokens are identical, doesn't show this on the screen. The transit token that's in that first box, you can see that both of those tokens are different. So for the same person, for the same token in transit, nobody can tell that it's the same person because the tokens are different with public key, private key encryption. Once it gets to us, we unwrap that encryption back to the original hash, and now we see, oh, these tokens match exactly. This is the same person. And so then you can see down below, we can match Duke and UNC patient to their Medicare data. We match into CMS as well. There was a point I was going to make, and I lost it. Oh well. So that's the general process here. That's the point. I mentioned, and we all know, our identifiers are messy. They're different. The reason that we use many different tokens is because we want to try many different tokens to try to get one token that actually is consistent across the same patient for different locations. So if first name is misspelled, there's a token that doesn't use first name. If telephone is mistyped, there's a token that doesn't use telephone, okay? So we actually use multiple tokens that I showed you previously to try to overcome that missingness. So how do we know that this matching is working, given that you can't actually see the data? How can you even evaluate something in that context? This is about data quality. I gave a presentation at a conference a couple of years ago showing that we actually had some in N3C, like in the INPC, we see data coming in for a patient who's apparently died. And this is one of our data quality checks in N3C. I'll get back to you and show you why there are zombies. We did not kill them a second time. They're not actually zombies. But I'll show you in a minute after I get through the data quality piece. So we do data quality at two parts of our process. So again, 2 swim lanes internal to the Linkage honest broker. Number 1, at token ingestion, when we receive that pile of tokens from a site contributor, we look at their tokens independently for a variety of metrics, and I'll show you those metrics in a second. So token ingest, let's look at their tokens individually, see if there's anything unusual about those tokens. Then we have to once they've gone through the ingestion process, we have to match those tokens. And after we match the tokens, we can then perform some additional quality analysis based on the linkages, and I'll show you a little bit about that. So, some of the metrics that we use weekly, we actually generate these reports weekly. We look at how many people did you send us? How many just records that you believe are unique are you sending? We periodically see significant 100,000 record drops, 500,000 record increases, and we have to understand why that is. We can't see the data, but we know it's increased or decreased dramatically. That takes communication back and forth, and that helps us catch issues. Token completion rate, that is just, well, if I have a social security number token, but social security number is only present in their EHR 66% of the time, then their token completion rate for any SSN plus date of birth plus gender at best is going to be 66%, right? We can look at that and we monitor the completion rates. And we do see, I mean, particularly with SSN, we see dropouts in SSN periodically when somebody decides they don't want to send SSN anymore. And that potentially will change how we match that site. But we can monitor other fields as well. And again, that gives us a sense is, are they doing the same thing? Are we seeing the numbers about the same? If we're seeing consistency, that gives us reassurance. If we're not seeing consistency, then we begin to raise questions about their process. Also, I mentioned this primary field analysis. I want to show you this here. Very busy screen. I recognize that. I just want to make the point here. These are completion rates. So anything less than 90%, 0.9 complete. Oh, that's down to 90. It's yeah. Anyways, you can see the numbers here, and we can see the completion rates across different sites for each of these tokens. You don't need to necessarily follow that, but what we can do, if you see here with this yellow streak right here, we have a completion rate below 90%. It's very consistently, all of these fields have basically the same completion rate, okay? which token up here aligns with this completion rate number? Which token perfectly matches up with the yellow line? Any answers? Anyone? Bueller? Do you understand the question or no? So there is a token at the top that has exactly the same fields as the fields, the token, or the yellow color highlights. So which token up there runs from here to here? Which, and I asked the question wrong, which field runs from here to here alone? Oh, you can, I'm so sorry. Okay. You should have said that sooner. Sitting up here. So, and then it doesn't work. Okay, all right. Well, I'll just give you the answer. So here, this lines up exactly with the sex field. Okay, good. So that lines up exactly with the sex field. So we can make a pretty strong inference that sex is the offending field to lower that completion rate. Okay. And we can use that that's non-disjunction set theory. But we can use that. Here we know, like, look at this. Here's the completion rate of 4%. So here are your numbers. So SSN for that site, so each one of these rows, SSN completion is low for that site. And we go back to that site and we say, hey, your SSN completion is low. Can you do something about that? And keep in mind, we can't see the data, but we can see metadata about the data that helps us make inferences. By the way, the quality part of this work is one of the most attractive services that we provide as a linkage honest broker. NCATS has told us nobody else does this. And so this is sort of our secret sauce, but it's not so secret anymore. On the match side, remember, that was ingestion. Now we're talking about the matching side, and we have a number of different metrics dealing with clusters. What proportion of the site is matching both inside and outside? So again, we look for duplicates inside the system and we look for links outside the system. We look at things like gender disagreement, date of birth disagreement, and mortality alignment is not really done much anymore. So I think this is a pretty boring slide, but I'll just point out that, again, each of these is 1 week in the life of N3C. So you can see the total number of contributed entities on 11/11/2022. That was a big day for us. We got 7.8 million entities contributed. That's when we're starting up. Then the next week, we got I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Prior to November 11th, we had 7.82 million. We got another 36,000. We bumped up. The next week, actually, Tony, I don't know why these numbers are all the same. Anyways, we watched the total number of records that are coming in. This is old data, and I thought I better. Anyways, and we can look at over on the right, the match unique, duplicate records, duplicate unique, represent what proportion of the total records are actually unique records, what percent of the records are duplicates, and what percent of the duplicates are unique. So I won't go into that. I really like diving into the details on record linkage, but I'll try to behave. So when we talk about cluster sizes, what do we mean? Well, if one person matches to another, that's a cluster size of 2. If one person matches to 2 other records, that's a cluster size of 3. Got it? Make sense? Okay, good. So every week for each site, we calculate how many clusters they are generating, both internally and externally. Okay, why? Because internal matching is different than external matching. And we can follow these trends. And again, we can make inferences here, because if we start seeing a site have cluster sizes of 50 or 100, let's say we see a site, just to make this bombastic, a site has a cluster size of 500, and they've got about, let's say they have many examples of a cluster size of 500. What's wrong with the match algorithm? Take a guess. What's wrong with the match algorithm? There's something wrong with the match algorithm. It's too greedy. It's over matching. When we see high cluster size matches increase, when we're testing new algorithms, these cluster sizes become very important. We can see if previously a site with version 1 of an algorithm was only getting up to cluster sizes of 3 or 4 at a site, then we try a new algorithm, and now we're seeing cluster sizes of 20, 50, 70. But whoops, that's too greedy an algorithm. We have to go back and we have to reinvestigate what's going on there. So the cluster helps both in routine data quality measurement, and it also helps in new algorithm development. Speaking of matching algorithm validation, how do we do that? The other ace that we have up the sleeve is we have probably the country's largest in vivo matching laboratory with access to identifiable data. When we build a new match algorithm, we not only test it within N3C, looking at clusters, looking at all of those quality statistics, but we have the answer key because we can see the clear text in the IMPC. And this is one of the other very strong positive features that Regenstrief brings to the N3C capabilities. There's a linkage on broker capabilities. There's a lot of other companies who are getting into this space. And again, some of these slides were presented to NCATS to show them what makes us unique. And remember, I said to the NCATS leadership at the beginning of the day at our face-to-face, I said, the confusion ends here. At the end of the day, when we're doing our site debrief, the chief financial officer raises his hand and says, Shaun was right. I didn't ask him to say this. We said, Shaun was right. There's no more confusion now, which is a very positive sign for us. So what else do we, yeah, I mean, you guys know about the INPC. So zombies, or did we kill them twice? Here's what we found when we analyzed the data. We found that 85% of patients had their last clinical observation before they died. Great, that's what we expect, that's the way it should be. 10.7% had their last clinical observation within 30 days of dying, which again, very acceptable. We know that these clinical systems continue to churn out data after the fact. So a month after. So 95% of this mortality data is excellent. Then we get down to the onesies, twosies. These, from 30 to 60 day, we see 1.4%, we see 0.2% from 60 to 90, et cetera. Those are errors in the dates. There's errors in the data that we use to match. And so those are incorrect death matches, but they're a very small number. Those more than 1 year are probably 1 year off errors. You see it kind of takes just a tiny bump there. But anyways, so these are some of the quality tests. So you might say linkage honest brokering is, if anything, about data quality and being able to track, monitor, and improve data quality. in the system. But I said this is for service and innovation. I wanted to point out, we've actually, long before privacy preserving record linkage was a thing, if you'll notice, Clem Gunther, who was a former Regenstrief investigator, and I wrote a paper on the foundations of this. This is the earliest mention of privacy preserving record linkage in healthcare data. And so we're proud of that. We've also done some, if you want to learn more, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, you can read some of these other papers, because I know they're super exciting to folks. This describes the overall system. We had that published in Learning Health Systems. It gives an overview like I'm giving you today. We actually did an evaluation with WashU of their state cancer registry, evaluating the accuracy of the algorithm. It was good. We have been building more machine learning, leaning into AI methods for privacy preserving record linkage. And I won't, again, go into those gory details other than to say we're seeing F scores here in the high 90s, between 98 and 99%. Over on the far right is the F score. And we're seeing that with machine learning techniques, XGBoost. That's a good method to use. By the way, with this boom in AI, people should not forget about all of the methods that we've been using prior to large language models that often work just as good at much lower cost and for fewer resources. So keep thinking about those old algorithms. In fact, I would argue that when I review a paper that uses the newfangled AI for a prediction or other things, one of my questions back to them is, did you compare it to logistic regression and some of these other tried and true techniques? And I'll ding them on that. So statistics in the N3C, we've got over 27 million records now. That's our duplicate percentage. We've linked in. I've been told these numbers are old and our numbers are much higher now, but we've linked in Medicare, Medicaid, and imaging mortality, linked to all of us, et cetera. So we can link to a number of different sources. This is our pitch slide. Why you should go with Regenstrief. And this will be in our renewal for April when we have a competitive renewal. I want to say a couple things about this type of infrastructure in general. This new administration has looked across the NIH landscape, and they've seen projects like All of Us. Gathers data from lots of different sites, has to integrate it, allow research to use it. They see the NIA Linkage program, gathering data from lots of sites, pulling it all in for researchers to use. They see the NIMH de-identified matching platform, where they gather data from lots of different sites, pull it in. They see N3C, which is another platform doing similar things. They see Data Counts, which is another platform receiving a lot of money. HHS has asked, why are we spending hundreds of millions of dollars on platforms that do the same thing over and over again? And so there is a push right now in HHS and the NIH to think about how to consolidate and create repurposable infrastructure. There's a lot of behind the scenes conversations going on right now, so it's all about reading the tea leaves. But when the government shut down in September, that day, we were given a notice that N3C was being discontinued. Through the government shutdown, NCATS, Joni Rutter, director of NCATS, and her team spent a lot of time talking with HHS. At the end of the government shutdown, HHS was telling people that this is an exemplar platform, and Congress gave us $13 million, excuse me, that's wrong. They gave NCATS $13 million, they added $13 million to NCAT's budget this year. 10 million of that is for N3C. So when people learn about what our platform does, how it works, people like it. And so there are many other opportunities like this coming, and one of our strategic goals is to continue to find and partner on projects that gather data from lots of different places and need to link it safely and securely for research. That's a common pattern happening over and over again, and we think that our linkage broker work is as good as anybody's. In addition, if there are any sort of more mathematically, computer sciencey, biostatistically minded people out there, I would love to be able to work with students, junior faculty on matching, because to date, I've not been able to, and this is my fault, convince and get people excited about this space. There's so much research to be done, so much opportunity. And unfortunately, there's a lot of other things on everyone's plates. So it would be great to get more individuals interested in this space. So with that, I realized when I finalized the slides, I didn't put in here if I were you guys, I'd be saying, okay, great, Shaun, this is how you do all this stuff, but what's the accuracy? How accurate is it? What's the sensitivity and specificity or PPV? So our sensitivity is between 85 and 90%. So that means we're missing between 10 and 15% across the board. Our positive predictive value is above 99%. So as we've done with the health information exchange, we fiercely defend against the false positive. You can argue that might not be the right choice. Maybe we should make our algorithm a little bit greedier. We're working on the machine learning and AI-based models actually do much better. That project that I mentioned, DataVant, is supporting us on. We're actually evaluating different models and seeing improved performance when we use more advanced methods. So that accuracy should continue to improve. Yeah. So with that, I'll see if there are any questions. If not, I can always talk about AI.
I was going to say, how about it? What do you think about AI? But I won't do that. What do you think about dates? I mean, dates are PHI, and if I want to know the,
Yeah,
is that me?
I don't know why it's in there.
If I want to know the readmission rate within 30 days, I have to know when you're discharged or when to come back in, and at least initially, dates of service were PHI. So how do you deal with that?
So the dates that we receive in the Linkage Honest Broker Enclave are fully encrypted. In the clinical enclave, there is a procedure for looking at dates independent of anything else. So asking these discharge questions, Bill, you can't do that with N3C because you're not given a visible date with a full set of clinical data. Don't do that. You can get deltas if you want, if you want to know 3 weeks after, or 2 days, but you can't know that it was January 1st to, January 14th. And the dates we're talking about are date of birth, date of death. Those are the 2 dates that we have in the system. Tony, aren't the dates, we submit data as well, IU, Regenstrief, our participants, we fuzz the dates, don't we? Or do we not? No, okay. All right, so it's a limited data set that we send. Yeah.
The next question.
I'll repeat it.
Great. My main question is the following, based on our experience and record linkage across states. We see about 2/3 of links are identified in a the remaining 1/3 is identified by the probabilistic factor, which involves
Was this Sammy Garber, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
review, looking at the actual identifiers
Mhm.
to determine true matches. How do you accommodate for that?
So we don't do any manual human review operationally. As I mentioned, when we're updating or developing enhancements to the algorithm, we do use clear text manual review of the algorithm. So we create a new algorithm, run it against INPC data, we'll look at the matches in clear text because we have access to that, and we calculate the accuracy that way for an algorithm. So that's probably closest to what you described. But remember, I said our sensitivity is much lower than our positive predictive value. Again, because, and you're saying you're about, I didn't know if you said 60%? What percent were deterministic? Okay, so 66%. So we, with our de-identified matching algorithm, we're able to get that about 20 to 25 points higher by using different combinations of tokens. And we validated that on clear text data. And we watch to see if our data quality statistics change significantly. We want to keep our data quality statistics about where they are. If they change significantly, then we want to go back and look at the algorithm. So,
Thank you, Shaun. This is Sammy. Can you hear me?
yes.
So this is great, and I love it, and I think this is the future for sure. The part I'm struggling with is the 60. So we're seeing about 60 to 65%, which is about roughly 2/3 of our deterministic matches. We're able to identify most of the linkages, but we still have a good chunk, which is about 1/3, and also this depends on the data sources and the cleanliness and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, we're still missing a big chunk, which is 1/3, and this is based on a lot of linkages over the past many years. We do, the methods you described with the tokens is very similar, in my mind at least, to using different deterministic matches
Well,
across.
tokens are effectively different deterministic matches.
Exactly. So we're still left with, and we do have, like, in our repertoire, we have 25 to 30 deterministic matches that we use, and we try to hit it from different areas, similar to what this is doing. But still, you're left with that gray area that you're missing, and that gray area is a bit large, especially when you're doing with so many errors, data entry errors, and so on and so forth. So this is great when everything looks clean, but as soon as you have some data sources, so two issues here. The first one is when you're dealing with data sources that don't have enough data for you to use a lot of tokens. And number two is if you actually have data sources that do give you enough tokens, but it's so messy that those tokens are not really giving you a lot.
Yeah, I agree that those are issues you've raised, a number of pieces, I guess. So I'm in agreement with you that a pure deterministic with exact match would get you about 2/3. Remember that we also use address standardization and name phonetic transformations as well. And that helps to bump it up. And I also think that you're matching a different population as well, Sammy. These are largely coming from large academic medical centers. So the data is not particularly low quality. And I know that you guys deal with a lot of low quality data.
Thank you, Shaun.
Yeah.
Great. Nice presentation. It was great to learn a little bit more about the details. Thanks so much. And really great work by the teams who are doing a lot of this work that I think it's just really critically important. So a couple of questions for you. So I'm curious about the software that you mentioned that Datavant does and that part. Is that critical for the partner to do that? So could we do you mentioned it was the tokenization part, or do you really need that other partner? And then the other question, was around the connection of the data, how often are the sites, the clinical sites sending that in, or is it real time? What's the connection?
Yeah.
Does that go directly to us or through DataVant? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So DataVant receives no data. DataVant gives people software that the people who receive the software use. Could we do what DataVant does with their software? Yes. Has DataVant been a great partner and helped open doors for lots of different opportunities? Yes. So, yeah, right. Right, yeah, I'm not sure that that's a priority at this time. And in terms of the data transmission frequently, it's up to the sites. Some sites send more frequently than others. I know that, we continue to receive data from some sites on a weekly basis. We Regenstrief, we haven't submitted in a while, have we, Jeff? I don't think we have. And some sites, since the government shut down, it's been slow to start back up. But as soon as the government opened back up, we started getting data again. So they don't. Yes. Yeah. That's right. That's the situation under what was created under the COVID N3C. Certainly data governance, and there's a lot of data governance discussions underway within the CTSI leadership right now about how this should work moving forward. I don't think we've added any new sites since the government shutdown. Going once, going twice. All right, thank you very much.